So mine are very basic, straightforward. First obvious question you've got it a million times. Why comedy? I mean, you've obviously written books,
yeah.
Wrestler. You've done so many things.
I guess it's kind of telling when people learn you're doing comedy and they go, "Really? You?" And I thought I'd done some humorous stuff over the years. But we always considered ourselves to be storytellers inside the ring, and doing comedy is just another, I guess, arena for telling stories.
Well, you've been in a million bits, obviously.
Yeah.
And along that lines, you have, I'm assuming, what is probably a million stories. How do you pick the ones you tell, or how do you land on? Do you mix it up every night?
Well, tonight's show is a challenge because it was open to kids of all ages, and I didn't really want to offend anybody, and so I'd say 80% of the stuff I talk about, things I wrote down and thought about today, and you see what works and what doesn't, and sometimes there's a surprise story. Tonight there was a question from the audience that went really well, and I guess I'll do enough stuff. It's just a matter of throwing things at the wall and seeing what eventually sticks to it.
Well, speaking of getting thrown, what do you find easier, getting choke slammed through the top of a cage, or tossed onto an announce table off the top of a cage, or what you're doing? Yeah.
I know there's a big difference between being passable at something like comedy and being really, really good. And I really respect the comedians who put in the time and effort and live for it the way I used to live for wrestling. But this is not that difficult to just show up and tell some stories once in a while. To be good at it is really difficult. To be okay at it is not so hard.
The last question, I just want to talk about TNA a little bit.
Sure.
And obviously with Hogan and Bischoff coming on board, and you guys are really getting a push, and the word on the street is you're moving to Monday nights to go head to head. What's your thoughts? What's your feeling? I mean, you gave TNA a little business on stage, but
very little, very little. I really enjoy it, and I would have thought that going head to head was a mistake the first time, but it did definitely create a buzz, and the best possible scenario for everybody, wrestlers, wrestling companies, and especially fans, is for people to be talking about the product, because it will ultimately make everybody better.
Do you think this time is going to be, you think Bischoff is going to be smarter this time than the last time?
Well, he was pretty smart the first time.
Yes.
I've read a couple things he said, where he's talked about the lessons he learned. I mean, it was kind of crazy the first time around, just like it was crazy when Vince McMahon went national, and nobody had arranged like a pattern of a loop of shows, where you might like wrestle in the Midwest for 4 or 5 days. So in the mid-'80s, they just started flying everywhere, from Seattle to Boston, back to the West Coast, because no one had ever done it before. So you learn as you go, and you try to learn from your mistakes.
Well, along that line, why the jump to TNA? I mean, you see Flair, Hardy, all these guys are leaving WWE to go to TNA. What is it with Vince McMahon and the WWE?
Well, it's not necessarily there's anything wrong with working for them. I loved it for the most part, for off and on for 12 years, but it would be similar to a baseball player who, isn't going to get his swings in on one team, and switches over and ends up having an all-star year. So I still felt like I could be a big contributor, and TNA has given me that chance.